Welcome back to Coast Files. And today I'm going to talk about something that is water related, which is the whole point of this podcast. And it's also kind of creepy. This is a story that I thought was going to have a lot more depth to it, and it really does not, but it's still very interesting. It's almost like when you come across like a short story or some kind of folklore, and there's just enough to get you super interested and you want to dig deeper, and you just simply can't. So some of the things, so but this is kind of great because
there's one book on it, and that's
well, this story really happened. But when you are hearing the details or even just like the general kind of outline of the story, you can see how it can inspire lots of other kind of creepy content like movies and poems and things like that. So the story today is called The Smalls Lighthouse Tragedy. Are you scared?
Dun, dun, dun.
So you may ask yourself, what is a lighthouse? Listen, Patty, okay, I'm trying to this a little bit.
I've never actually asked that question to myself. So
maybe today's the day that you're like, wait a second, do I even know what a lighthouse is? Is it like a house that has lots of lights? No, it's not. Lights are involved. So let me describe a lighthouse to you in great detail so you just really can understand what the story is all about.
Are you going to tell me about the parts that it's built with?
No, I'm not going to go in that much detail. This is from Wikipedia verbatim, so it is in quotes. Quote, okay. A lighthouse is a tower, building, or other type of physical structure designed to emit light from a system of lamps and lenses and to serve as a beacon for navigational aid for maritime pilots at sea or on inland waterways. Second paragraph. Lighthouses mark dangerous coastlines, hazardous shoals. I copied and pasted that. What's a shoal? Did they mean shore?
Is it just shore? Or you get misspelled?
No. Shoals is something. Wait, shoals is something. I know I've heard this.
I mean, like Wikipedia's never steered me wrong, so I hope that shoals
not once in our lives has Wikipedia steered us wrong. What is
at least not in this day and age? SHOALS.
Shoal of
SHOALS.
A stretch of shallow water. It's a stretch of shallow water, apparently.
We're all learning something
before
new today.
I can even hit enter, she has the answer.
She's just too
good. A shoal is a shallow area of a body of water, such as a river, lake, or sea, where the water depth is relatively shallow compared to its surrounding area.
Just wait, can you imagine seeing a lighthouse in like a river? That just would be so crazy.
Nothing comes in there.
No, it's just for ducks or whatever. Okay, so hazardous shoals.
We learned a new word already.
I know. Reefs, rocks, and safe entries to harbors. They also assist in aerial navigation. Once widely used, the number of operational lighthouses has declined due to the expensive maintenance, ain't that always the truth, and has become uneconomical since the advent of much cheaper, more sophisticated, and effective electronic navigational systems. But they're so cute. So
I was going to say, I'm like, but they can't be as cute as a lighthouse.
Like, who wants to see a bunch of computer parts on a magnet? No one.
Isn't there still like one or something like that that's still manned? I remember seeing something about that.
That could be the next case we do. The last
land lighthouse. Live in a lighthouse, right? Is that true?
So I don't think that that's very common today. They definitely would have maintenance because, it's
back in the day.
Oh, yeah, you had to. Well,
yeah, they would do like shifts.
Let me tell you about the shifts, you guys. Okay. So
we're getting ahead of ourselves here.
I have a couple photos. So this next little part, you can look at photos 1, 2, and 3. Essentially 1 and 2 are just maps to show you, it's not in the middle of an ocean per se, but you can't see land. So it feels like this area is very isolated. So I have 2 map photos and then I have an aerial shot. So you can see exactly kind of the area we're talking about. I will put these on Instagram and they'll be on the website as well. So the Smalls Lighthouse is located on a cluster of large rocks known as the Smalls. It's about 32 kilometers west of Marolles Peninsula in Pembrokeshire, Wales. I know that in Wales, words never look like how they're said. So it's spelled Marloes. That could be pronounced anyway. I actually have no idea. I also have the coordinates in case you want to look it up. So it's 51.721239 due north and 5.669831 due west.
What's that in
And
So it's
knots?
on this little point of land with the
Shut
X,
up.
I assume that you.
No. So the
No?
X comes into play later. So the little
Oh,
red pin that says Smalls
okay. So
Lighthouse,
it's
that's where it
just
is. So it
in the
doesn't look
middle of
like
the
it's too
water?
far away, but it really like you cannot see land, you could not swim this. So you're pretty far out.
That's
The
so
next
cool because
photo.
I thought so. Is it just kind of warn people to not hit this rock? Is that its
So
purpose?
yes, so these are a cluster of rocks, but I think in general that's kind of a more shallower area. And because it's kind of in the middle of this big open way, you probably wouldn't notice it. The rocks are not like mountainous, like I mean, it's hard to
Yeah,
tell
they're
from
very
the
small.
yeah, it's hard to tell from the satellite photo, but you can see that it's not like they're not super high. So I imagine if it's very late, very dark, foggy, especially like, and this is back in the 1700s, so you didn't have sonar or radar, so it's only just what you could see. So I imagine that before this, many ships got crashed. So hence the
Crashed.
lighthouse. They super crashed. So
Like, super
now we're gonna
crashed. Like,
now we're
got
gonna talk.
crashed.
We're gonna talk about the lighthouse in question. So the original structure was built in 1775. That's almost 250 years ago. That's old.
That is old.
That's
Wow.
really
Yeah.
old. It was built by a Liverpool merchant and ship owner named John Phillips. And originally, this is terrifying. The way it was constructed, it was on oak pillars that kind of like shot out of the rock from the ocean. So water would pass through it. So like you would
Oh,
be
wow.
in this little top of these massive oak pillars and the water is moving freely. Like that to me is scary.
How also like how
Yeah.
long would that wood last before like it
It
would
lasted a
topple?
very long time. So this was
I wouldn't think it
1775.
would.
I
I
know.
guess
And
wharfs and docks are made of wood though, and they're supposed to be in the water for a long
but I would
time.
imagine
yeah, that's true.
that's different because out here it's like I mean, I guess there's rocks, so you would have some breakage, but it's like just the full force of the ocean. Whereas in a harbor or wharf, I don't know, I guess you're closer to land. I imagine it wouldn't be as strong. Not that I'm an
That's
expert.
true.
I have no idea.
I am
I
a
am
wood
impressed
expert,
though
actually.
that they were able to do this construction like out on
That's
the
what
water.
I was
like
thinking.
that.
So can you like how? Okay, anyway, I can't even get into how it was built. If anyone died, I assume yes, because I just assume yes. It just looks so
It
wild.
sounds rickety.
If you look, I mean, it lasted a long time, so it sounds rickety, but it was actually very strong. And they would use this method of building lighthouses for like, well, at least a couple hundred years. So photo 4, it's a hand drawing, but it shows what it looked like back when it was first built in 1775. It looks very handmade. Like it looks good, but it looks like, I don't know, I wouldn't trust
It looks like in the water. I guess you're saying that's the water that's like passing through it, eh?
Yeah.
That's what it's trying to like show there.
It's not like stilts or something. It's
So on that cluster of rocks, I don't know if it was like moved around, but like this is just a sketch of it. So it was built onto rock, but it was designed so that water, should it splash up on those rocks, it would just pass right through. I guess like less resistance on a full structure. So it would just
that actually makes a lot of sense.
like, again, like not that I don't know. I can my brain can put it together. So it was built by, I already forgot his name, John Phillips. And it was used with plans from another gentleman from Liverpool. Okay, this makes no sense. It says he's a musical instrument maker. His name is Henry Whiteside. So tell me what business he has designing a lighthouse. Like, does that make sense?
He's
to
good
anyone?
with wood.
Yeah.
Or just
I just think he makes violins and
he's like, you know
decided to
what?
take
If I
his
use this,
skill
I use the
elsewhere.
same blueprints for a violin, but I put it in water. Is that not a
Yeah.
lighthouse?
That is.
So the existing structure that is there now was rebuilt in 1861, but from 1775 until then, it was this structure of, or sorry. No, that makes no sense. Why is Wikipedia lying to me? So when this whole thing happened, it was the full like kind of standard looking lighthouse. But either way, long story short, it lasted for a long time with this pillar system. But it was rebuilt. It didn't get destroyed.
Okay.
I guess they just figured we have more modern ways.
And they're like, there's got to be a better way.
and there is. And then the next step of that was not letting people live there by themselves. So the lighthouse is 41 meters tall, or 135 feet, and it was originally lit with 8 oil lamps, which doesn't sound like a lot. So they would use oil lamps, and different shaped glass and mirrors, and that's how it would illuminate the top, which sounds very just hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, that doesn't seem like a lot, but I guess with those mirrors and, they were able to project quite a
well,
lot.
exactly. And the fact that it was, oil lamps too, I imagine how dangerous that would be if anything were to like break and fall.
It's
and
like,
oil lamps
if
and
you're being
wood.
hit by water, like constantly huge waves.
Well, and I mean, like the top of the lighthouse is not near the water, but I just imagine, you have something very, very flammable up top and something very dangerous below. I just not interested.
In your wooden lighthouse.
Yeah, in your wooden lighthouse.
They must have just been waiting for the giant light bulbs to be invented. They're like, one day.
There's something even better about a musical instrument maker design a lighthouse. He went to visit the lighthouse that he had helped design only a couple of years after it was built. I had some conflicting dates. So I know he went to visit in 1776 or 77, but I'm not sure if the lighthouse was built in 75 or 76. So either way, within 2 years, he went to visit his own lighthouse. The weather was so bad, he was stranded there for a month by himself. Which just
oh my god, by himself?
That's so scary.
Totally by himself.
Yeah, so, did he have provisions?
I would wonder.
Yes, he did.
Did no one know he was there? Like,
I mean, that's a great question. The thing about the 1700s, they would keep some records, and then others, they're like, "Wow, I guess we'll just,
we'll just
keep that." Yeah, we're just gonna keep it up in our brains, and we're just gonna pass it down to our kids, and then all of a sudden,
he needs to write that down.
So he was at his lighthouse, and I'm sure he was thinking like, wow, I really should have designed like a bigger bedroom or something. But as his supplies dwindled, he knew he had to do something. You can't swim. There at times there was a tender tied up, but really, there's no
What's
land.
A tender?
Oh, a tender. It's like a small little boat, small little dinghy that you can use to kind of like shuffle around the area. It's not a big boat. It's probably for a few people. But if you look at photo number 5, this is when kind of the weather is kicked up. And I mean, a little boat like that wouldn't get far. If you could even leave the island safely, again, I don't know if you would make it back to shore. So this is like the coolest thing ever. He wrote a message like on a piece of parchment, I guess, rolled it up, put it inside a bottle, put that bottle inside a wooden box, and just tossed it in the ocean, hoping it would make it to his friend in St. David's. This is what the note said. I know, in St. David. So if you look at photo number 1, that's the X. The X is where his friend's living. So this is what the note said. I also just love Old English. We doubt not but that whoever takes this up will be so merciful as to cause it to be sent to Thomas Williams, Esquire, Trilithin, near St. David's, Wales. Can't you just like simplify? Anyway.
Hey, give this to my friend. I'm alone and dying.
Simple.
Okay, so basically he's saying, hey, if you find this letter, please, for the love of God, give it to my friends.
Yeah.
Or give it to my friend Thomas. Yeah. It doesn't even say like, hey, it's me. I'm stuck in an island.
On a lighthouse.
I have to assume.
Yeah, get to the pertinent information.
So
right,
he tosses it in the water, and he's like, well, damn, I hope this works. It fucking arrives on the beach in front of this guy's house.
What?
Wow.
So 2 days later, after he puts it in, it floats its way up, and it quote, it arrived almost outside the door of the addressee to whom it was duly delivered. That to me
I feel like that is embellished.
I mean,
does this person live right on the beach?
Yeah. So if you zoom in, there is a giant. It's a little cove, and it's all beach. So I mean, 2 doors down. That kind of sounds like maybe it landed on the beach, and he lives on the beach, and it made it there. But I just find that's hilarious, and that's how he got rescued. Otherwise, maybe they would have found his body. Okay. Wow. So that was the first instance that this lighthouse.
That actually reminds me of a story when I was going to meet you in Boston last September. The woman sitting next to me on the plane, I guess we got in a conversation, and she asked me where I was from. So I said Nova Scotia. She's like, I have a Nova Scotia story. I've never been there, but she went on like this boat. I forget exactly where they were. I think it was like near Bermuda or something. And they put like message in the bottle overboard, which is illegal, by the way. Apparently, I did not know that.
I was gonna say, how cool is
What's
that?
littering?
I didn't know it's illegal.
So I forget exactly where they were. I thought she said Bermuda. It might not have been that far. But anyway, they put the messages in the bottle overboard. And she's like, years later, I got a call because she left her number and address in the message to see if someone would ever contact her. And it was some people from Nova Scotia. And they got in touch with her.
I love that. I didn't know it was illegal. Like, people pump oil and like literal garbage and chemicals. Like, you can't put a fun little like message in a bottle.
Maybe it's still littering.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay, well then talk.
I don't know.
It's still deliberately putting garbage into the ocean.
It's not garbage. It's a very slow moving message.
Listen.
I mean, I think in the case of the lighthouse guy,
we have a phone now.
It was an emergency.
Yeah, in his case, he had nothing else.
I also feel like back in 1777, the rules were like,
yeah. It probably wasn't.
All the rules were
they were like, don't polluted our oceans like crazy.
Well, it's probably don't say anything bad about the king, and that's about it. Like, whatever else, go right ahead.
Anything else goes.
I couldn't find much more information. I assume he got rescued. The anecdote just ends with, and it was delivered. So he was picked up. I'm assuming he was picked up, but it actually didn't go into much detail.
He reads it, he's like, cool story, bro.
He's like, oh man, I know that guy. Just tosses
Lock that one away.
Okay, I can't forget to reply to this.
I mean, that is incredible. I imagine though, if he didn't, if he didn't get a response from the letter within, I don't know, a couple weeks, it's you would have to have taken your chance on that little dinghy boat.
I mean, I can swim that far.
Even was one. That's one of the things is that
they have the little. You wait for calm waters and you get in that little boat, and it looks like it's manageable distance. I don't know how far it actually is.
Someone dropped him off. So did they just clear that memory? Oh yeah, there's a guy. The guy that designed the lighthouse is there. I
think about this.
I know.
Always tell people where you're going.
Or maybe they died. Maybe the people that dropped him off died on the way back or something.
I feel like
they also no longer exist.
It's probably seen a lot of stuff and it just hasn't been recorded. Or maybe they wrote it in a bottle to save it for later and it got washed ashore. Okay, so now listen. Now we're going to get really dark. We're going to get to the good stuff. Okay. This is the story, the actual story.
Oh, sorry.
Was that a cat sneeze?
Yeah, she wants attention.
Okay.
Well, she wants to be on the podcast. This story is for you.
Yeah.
So nearly 25 years later, there would be another incident at the Smalls Lighthouse. I do believe it happened sometime leading up to 1801, which again, it's just that's a long time ago. What happened at this lighthouse caused for major policy changes that were in effect at 1801. So I don't know if the policies were changed in December 1801 and this happened earlier in that year, or maybe if it happened a couple of years previous and then the policies happened and, it just sounded like everything happened at the same time. I find that very hard to believe that an event would happen and within the same year policies are changed. I feel like probably it took longer. So all we know it was around the same time. So we're going to set the scene. I did something a little bit. Pardon me?
What year was this again?
So the actual event, what I can see, every single article is quoting the exact same things, and it says 1801. But if the event led to policy changes that also happened in 1801, that just seems like it's too close together.
I mean, it could have been faster back then.
I was going to say there might have been less.
There weren't checks and balances, probably there
You're just
today. And there's so much
red tape.
Bureaucracy. Yeah, there.
Okay, true.
Some guys this needs to change now, and they're like, oh, okay, write it up.
So then we can assume that within a very short period, this is going to happen. Now, because I didn't know, I kind of led off with, it's really hard to tell.
Mm-hmm.
So picture this. It's the late 18th century, early 19th century. The year is likely somewhere between 1799, 1801. These sound like made-up years, especially 1799. It sounds like a made-up year.
That was a year to party. That New Year's Eve went
off. I hear it was really, really good. the mead was phenomenal.
Off the charts, yeah.
Women's ankles were everywhere.
Oh my God, no, that wasn't until 1802.
Scandal.
You're way off. Okay. Two men wait in the cold, wind-whipped, salty air on a small dock in a small town on the west coast of Wales. They're not friends. Far from it. Although they're both named Thomas, the camaraderie ends there. Thomas Howell and Thomas Griffith are not friends. They're actually known in their small town to argue and bicker often and in public. So it's like the two like guys that hate each other, both named Thomas, but they're both so different.
Okay.
While not amiable with each other, they're about to be the two-person team running a lighthouse on a rock the size of 2 basketball courts. Yes, I looked up the size and I figured out what was comparable to basketball courts. That's not big.
Love that. And don't forget, actually a great visual.
It's hard to tell the elevation, but you're nearly in the water. So it's not like, oh, I have all the space. So you're on like 2 flooded basketball courts in the ocean.
Perfect.
After the grueling 32 with someone you hate. Another fucking Thomas. Too many Thomases. I've already mentioned 2 other Thomases before these 2 Thomases.
Listen, there weren't a lot of names back then to choose from.
Yeah, you had like 4 names.
There was 10, and 4 of them were Thomas.
Just spelled differently. Just spelt differently.
Sounds like you're from Wales. After the grueling 32-kilometer boat ride to the Smalls Lighthouse, there is little to be relieved about. While they're there, the ocean swells. Wait, while they're out of the ocean, I can't speak.
It's okay. It's only a podcast.
The sentence makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, your job now is speaking, but that's okay. You got this.
Okay. Now I read. You know what? If I could read my own writing. Okay. This is going to be fun for Lindsay and Chantel to edit. So
I'm not editing any of this.
While they're out of the ocean swells, things aren't much better on land, if you can call it land. Because it's actually just rocks. There's no grass or dirt
sound
or
effects right now.
Could you? The lighthouse is perched atop a large group of wave-washed rocks. There's no earth, no flat areas, no protection from the massive waves and gale force winds. Sounds charming. Here the details are lost to time and the truth with it. What we do know is that at some point during their contract to maintain the lighthouse and keep the oil lamps lit, Thomas Griffith died. Howell exclaimed it was some sort of freak accident that killed Griffith.
His knife?
It just slipped out of his hand and into his heart.
He walked into my knife. He walked into my knife 10 times.
It's like that Simpsons. If I'm walking like this and you get in my way.
I mean, and the fact too that they were known to hate each other. Can you imagine someone's like, okay, you have to do that. It's like, and then before you know it, they're just like fighting. So Howell, one of the Thomases, just said it was a freak accident, but there's literally no proof. They have no idea. It's his word versus the person that's now died. Mm-hmm. So fearing that he would be blamed for the attack, he did not get rid of the body. Because he easily could, it's a dead body. You could have just kind of
just rolled it into the ocean.
Honestly,
I think it would probably arrive on the shore though, with his
at his friend's place.
Jesus, it's like, God, everything just keeps coming to my friend's house, whose name is Thomas. Don't forget, another Thomas.
Oh wow.
So instead of being potentially accused of murder, he thought, I'm going to keep the body on the island. That way, when my contract is up and they come to pick me up, I can say, look, see, he's still here. Why would I kill him and leave the body? Because that also makes no sense.
Okay, smart.
So keeping the body inside the lighthouse,
though, because if you
the evidence,
the body,
and
it did show up,
it's like
there's no way.
At least if you keep the body, maybe you seem like less guilty.
Also, if you get caught there, you have food.
How did you're gonna get to how he actually died?
No, he never says. He says freak accident, and then
because I was gonna say if they found the body and there is no evidence of foul play.
The funny thing is that they ended up not finding the body.
Okay,
so let me get to it. So keeping the body inside the lighthouse became impossible as it decomposed because smell.
Yeah.
So Howell built a coffin out of extra pieces of wood and supplies that he had, and then he tied it down to the outside of the lighthouse. So it wouldn't blow away, but it wasn't physically with him because that's gross.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to live with a dead body either.
No, so at least it's outside. It's like
Unless it was you guys.
It's different. I'd have a shrine.
Yeah,
it's totally different. So now Howell was alone in what must have seemed like the middle of the ocean, the only sounds being intense waves crashing on the nearby rocks and strong winds battering the walls of the only shelter available. As the winds whipped outside, they blew the makeshift coffin apart. As Howell peered outside the window, the detached arm of his partner seemed to beckon him forward with each gust of wind. That is a real quote that he said.
Oh.
They said like detached limbs. So imagine, and it doesn't say, there's no timeline, which is what I mean. A lot of the details are lost to time. There's no timeline of how long they were there before Griffith died. They don't know how he died. No one says anything. And you also don't know how long after he died this happened. So I know bodies decompose and ligaments will fall away, and like that happens. So how did an arm become detached? Question? I don't.
Yeah, like how long was this?
It doesn't say. I know that it wasn't like months and months and months, because like obviously it's a very mentally draining job too. Like you're by yourself. Well, I mean, you have a partner, but you're in the middle of nowhere. You can't really communicate with anyone. And you're technically working 24/7. Like I'm sure you're doing sleeping shifts, but you're working nonstop. So I imagine it would be like at the most a few months at a time.
Yeah. Okay.
But there's really no way. So just imagine too. So either you killed this man. We don't know. Likely he probably did.
Yeah, so he did.
So this
There's
man is dead.
Involved.
You know what? I don't know if you're allowed
to bet they might have gotten in an argument.
And it was self-defense.
And he just pushed him down the stairs to the rocks.
Well, which there's a lot of in a lighthouse.
Yeah, I would assume.
So he's by himself. Not only did his partner die, at least if you hate someone, like someone to talk to, you can like make up,
someone to yell at.
Exactly. So now he's completely alone, and now his partner's body is falling apart outside, and there's like a dead arm, like, come here. That to me is so creepy.
Yep.
So in spite of his former
did
partner,
he listen?
No, he was rescued. So in spite of his former partner's decaying corpse hanging outside, he was able to work the lighthouse alone, and he kept the lighthouse's lamp lit the entire time he was there. Again, I have no idea how long it was for. When he was finally relieved of duty, his experience was so emotionally and mentally taxing that he was not physically recognizable by his friends or family. So he was like, "It's me," and there's like,
"So it's
I don't know her.
Who's that? I don't know her."
It's like when you become president, they say like you just age so fast. They show like
we all saw Barack Obama's hair
like before, when he started so young, and then at the end, he's
he still looks good, but it went from like dark brown to white to like.
He went from fox to silver fox in like
that's
3 hours of presidency.
Yeah.
So it was this instance that led to the change where going forward there would be a 3-person team. I was a 3-man team. Like there were no women, so it was a 3-man team.
So it's like in case you want to murder someone, you get back.
In case one of you dies. Yeah, that's right. But in case one of you dies or gets hurt, there's at least one other person so that your brain doesn't completely melt out of your head.
Yeah.
So that is literally the basis for a lot of different kind of like lightkeeper, like haunted kind of stories, because this was 2, because this is on an island, but most times lighthouses are just on the coast, so it would be one person who maybe lives there, maybe has a partner, maybe lives nearby. But this, I'm going to talk about how it inspired 2 other pieces of data. Is Samus completely on your lap right now? That's a big kitty. She's so cute.
She's our guest speaker.
Yeah.
So before we get into some popular culture, there was one other tragedy that they didn't talk about too much. So don't forget, that was early 1800s. We think it was 1801 is what a lot of the data said. So in 1831, same lighthouse, the waves were so large and so powerful that it somehow battered the lighthouse's main living quarters, the floor, and lifted it upwards into the ceiling and seriously injured, I think, the 3 lightkeepers that were there, and one of them died because of it.
Jesus.
Oh, wow.
So like, how does a wave do that? It like somehow went inside and up. Very, very scary. So unfortunately, one person did die at that time, but there was 3 people. So it's like, hey, we saw it because I also broke my arm and he broke his leg and this guy
it wasn't
died.
Nobody attacked anybody.
And there were no limbs like beckoning you into the water. Thank goodness.
There's the physical evidence of the destruction of the
True. So currently you can't visit it per se, but there's lots of tourists I've seen online that can go to other islands. You can go past it and be like, wow, look at that, but you can't actually go to it.
It's still standing right now?
Oh, it's still standing and it's still in use. But since
okay.
1987, or 37 years ago, it is now fully automated. I know I like seeing my
not that long ago at all.
Scares me. No, so which means that it had 3 people working there every time, manually working on lights. Like that makes no sense.
So now they just have someone like go out like occasionally to make sure everything's in
I couldn't find a lot of information, but I would imagine there probably is like biannual maintenance on it to make sure that all the gizmos and gadgets work. This is real highbrow lighthouse stuff, okay? Well, they have plenty. So in popular culture, this has been referenced. There was a radio play that they did, but the biggest one that people are now connecting this to is the movie that came out in 2019 by A24, whom we love, called The Lighthouse, with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. I only really knew of Robert mostly from Twilight, which I like to hate watch. Willem loved forever. I think we all do. I mean, you saw him as the Green Goblin and you're like, whoa, okay, this guy is for real. This movie is so bizarre in a really, really cool way. Like I know, especially you, Chantel, you're a big fan of A24. Just like weird, unnerving, like your back gets up, like you're uncomfortable. So that's the whole movie, basically. It's shot in black and white. It's really, really good. Highly suggest you watch it. It gets weird.
I wanted to see this movie, but ever since I moved here, Eric is not a big horror fan, but we have been watching a couple A24 movies recently, so I will have to add this to the list.
And this one, it's not a true horror movie. Like it's been described as a psychological thriller or like a character study. So it's not a pure
horror fantasy when I just search for it.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
What's the IMDb rating? Because that's the only way I can get Vadim to watch it.
7.4 out of 10, which for any sort of spooky movie is very high.
Yeah. As we know, horror movies are notoriously rated low, which is wild. Yes. So the film The Lighthouse also uses inspiration from an unfinished Edgar Allan Poe short story, also called The Lighthouse, but he spells it light-house. I didn't know this, but I guess Poe had almost just started this story, and it was going to be done in the style of like a found diary, and he got to day 4 and then I guess Poe died. So he really didn't get very far. It's it's literally like a paragraph of text is what he got. But I guess the writers and the filmmakers who made the 2019 movie were inspired by that Lighthouse short story, and then this story here of the Smalls Lighthouse. Another fun fact, principal photography for the Lighthouse took place on, you guessed it, Nova Scotia.
No.
Oh wow!
I gave you a lot of time to get this. So they had some sound stages in Halifax, and there was a lighthouse somewhere in Yarmouth, and they built some buildings around to kind of like make it suit what they needed for. So they did on-site filming in Yarmouth, and then a little bit in Halifax, and then I think also Boston a little tiny bit, mostly on sound stages though. Sound stages. But I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, there's, we're not the only
it makes sense.
Sure, but there's tons and tons. So if you look at photo number 6, you can see the lighthouse that they use in the movie, and then some of the parts that they built to kind of fill it in.
Oh,
wow. And that's it. It's a light case today with only 2 deaths.
Only 2. I mean, that you know of.
I feel like more had to die during the building because holy moly. I reading the research, it was like 9 oak pillars that they had to put together, and that can't be light. How did they get them there? How did you hold a pillar up and attach it strong enough so that it wouldn't, fall down in waves. So I'm assuming that more people died. But
did you find out how many people it did take to build it? Did it say anywhere?
There's literally no information.
No.
Like, I have so many questions. How did they get
Ask
the stuff
me.
over? It must have been in a boat.
Yeah.
So they must have had to really pick the day, right, when the water was really calm so that they could be there and start the construction.
I'm assuming that like levers and pulleys were used. That was used a lot back then, right?
Yeah.
But pretty crazy that they built this. I mean, it was in a very, very important area because you can see there's tons of rocks there, and it's probably a lot shallower than it seems. But
what caused them to have to build it? Like, was there a lot of crashes happening, or was somebody just like, you know what, this is going to be dangerous?
So I think that you have to infer a lot when it comes to these really old things, because there's like almost no information. There was.
All right, let's just go diving there. See, there's got to be a lot of ships sunk around that area.
I'll be in a pub on the coast in Wales. I'll be on that beach trying to find where that guy lived,
waiting for our message in a bottle, in a box. Oh, you know what? It looks like, I mean, it says St. George's Channel. I bet like to get from England to Ireland, people probably passed through that area.
I would say so. And
it looks like there's actually ferry routes or something on Google.
There is now. So that's what I was saying before, that you can't go to that island. It's not even an island, honestly. It's like a big cluster of rocks.
Yeah.
But there are, charters, because I guess there's lots of like seabirds you can go see. And it looks like it's very close to Ireland. So there has to be like ferries that bring people back and forth. So you can go past it. So yes, if you go to Google Maps, you can see the little dotted line of, ferry routes. But I tried to find, you can't charter anything to it. Maybe if you pay someone on the side, but essentially you can go past it and like look at it, and that's it.
So maybe you can still see it from Wales.
I don't know. I mean, it's only, what did I say? 100, it's 41 meters, and then it's 32 kilometers away. So mathematicians, get at us. Can you see that from the coast? I doubt it. Or if you
maybe with binoculars, like, how they have those set up in like different places in Nova Scotia where they're like, you can see all the way to PEI from here.
Like you put in a quarter and you can see across I mean, maybe. Again, research. Let's go to Wales, figure it out.
Okay.
Let's just go there and see if we can see it. I think that's the only way to.
There we go.
What I recommend is that you watch the movie The Lighthouse, and there is one scene. I'm not going to ruin it, but it's you know how you watch a movie and you just like know in your heart this was a play, like this was meant to be a play on stage, because people just don't talk the same way in a play that they do in a film. Like it's very kind of like when you see a musical, but the movie version, you're like, that's meant for the stage. So there's a few lines in the movie that are delivered that out of context are so hilarious. You just have to watch it. Very, very moody. It's filmed in black and white, and there's some kind of aspect ratio that makes it look even more kind of creepy and claustrophobic. So highly recommend. It's a weird one. Don't think you're going to be like, I don't know. It's weird, but it's good.
It's not a feel-good movie? It's not a family-friendly feel-good movie?
God, no. And there's some very, very weird imagery. It gets a little more like heady as you go, and you're like, is this real? Is what I think is real? Like what is reality?
So is my sleep paralysis demon going to visit me that night after I watch it?
You might feel kind of fucked up. You might be really turned off seafood for a while.
Okay, perfect. My favorite food.
That's the story.
That was awesome.
Yeah. I have so many questions still, and I understand that you can't answer them, but actually, I was going to ask, it's still working, but like it's an automatic now?
It's a functional lighthouse.
Or is it just like a tourist attraction?
No, it is a functional automated lighthouse. You cannot visit. You can go pass on a boat, going to do other like bird watching tours and boat tours. You can't go on the island, but you can check it out as you go past. Okay. And I'm sure it doesn't
looks like there are ferry routes that seem to go near it.
Yeah,
that must be close enough to get a view.
A little gander, and that's when those binoculars come in handy.
Yeah.
But there's no one there, but you know that there was a dead body outside that was waving like, hey, come on, everybody. I don't know if it was like,
hey guys, over here.
Yeah, I would love to know about the potential shipwrecks that are around there, because these rocks, I imagine, especially in high seas, they would not have been noticed.
No,
like, there had to have been a good reason to put a lighthouse there.
A lighthouse there.
And there's so many in that cluster that have broken through the surface, and that's obviously when it's, you know, like lower tide and when the water's calm. So I have to assume that there could be similar rocks that are just under the water, that are just outside. Probably why it's difficult for boats to go near, or maybe you would have to go from a small tender to a larger boat and not just directly. Like there is no shore. Like it's steep, jagged rocks. So how would you even get a boat? Anyway, so if you watch the movie, you know, although it's not like, and the setting's a bit different. I think in the movie they're on the coast of Maine, but it's very similar, where it's kind of like a desolate, like a solo island. You're not on the mainland. They do a good job of showing how challenging it could be to get supplies up, and it is set in the same time period. I think it is like maybe is it early 1900s? No, I think it's around the same time, where it's like the turn of the century. So, you know, it's like ropes, crates. It's very, very low tech. And yeah, any other questions you have, I can't answer. So just make it up, and that's probably close.
I mean, somebody locked that away to memory, and like that's it.
I feel like, how come we have so many stories about pirates and there's not enough about, like, you know, this island where there was a corpse? Like that would have been in the papers for sure, don't you think?
Yeah, maybe we need to find it on newspapers.com.
Yeah.
Like, I liked that, but yes, I have a lot of questions.
Yeah. So. And I have no answers at all.
That's okay.
So mysterious.
Be like
this was great.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this lighthouse. So
but yeah. Can you imagine it is, you know, 1801, and you're like, wait, what the hell happened? And how that can turn into like a ghost story, that the island becomes haunted. Like I can see all this stuff. I just feel like it's not used enough. It's cool. I mean, someone dies, that's sad, but it's such a unique story about being like isolated and your mental health, and how are you seeing things or hearing things? And did he think that the body was alive?
Oh, I'm so curious how long he was there for. And also that gives me like an Edgar Allan Poe Telltale Heart type feeling of like, he can hear the heart pumping under the floorboards, because he was like riddled with guilt. I'm like, was that what happened with him? He's like riddled with guilt, and he's like, the arms like, come hither.
And he didn't, in his
join me.
He didn't even get to like, so I guess the first couple pages, because it's really just like a paragraph of writing. The first little bit is just the lighthouse keeper kind of setting the scene, and it was just kind of setting the mood, like where he thought he was hearing things. So you could just see the start of a really, really cool kind of like spooky ghost story, and then he died and wasn't able to finish it. So
I also really wonder how long he was there for, like by himself.
How is that not like part of the story? It implied it was a while.
Yeah.
But
like, is a while like a month, or is a while like
it would
10
really
months?
depend how much food he had with him, I think, because you can only
that's fair.
But guys, if you have enough food for 2 people and one of them dies, you have lots of extra.
Kind of doubles your turn there.
I'm sure he had some really good cheat days, because he was able to figure it out.
Listen, maybe that's why he killed him. The other guy was eating too much, and he was like, dude.
Funny enough,
I don't know that I would.
In the movie, there are elements of food, and beans become a big player. Let me just tell you.
I imagine most canned food would become a big player. Listen, here's my problem when I'm trying to picture these things, is that I have no concept of like what happened when, like what people were dressed like in what era, like no concept whatsoever. I don't know why my brain just does not do that. It was like, I understand maybe 1950s and further. So when I see this, I'm like, was canned food? I can
comfortably I can comfortably go to the 1920s. And then
it didn't have Netflix, that's for sure.
And then prior to that, I'm like, okay, now, because if you think about the Titanic, that was 1910s, and that's kind of flexing where they went from like parasols and the big puffy butts to more like normal. So that phrase, like I'm thinking,
do they have toilets? Like I don't know. When were toilets invented? When did chamber pots become a thing? When did we stop throwing piss into the road? Like, honestly,
I've never stopped.
I think it was the 1800s, if I had to guess, but
like honestly, because sometimes Vadim will tell me things, he's like teaching me about history things, and I'm like, babe, I don't understand any of this. I don't understand when it was. Like, it just does not.
The
my
flushing
brain doesn't do that.
toilet, 1775 was patented as
What?
for, yeah.
So do you think that they had a toilet on the lighthouse? Probably not.
No.
I mean, two men, they're definitely
just because it was patented at that time doesn't mean that it was like even anywhere remotely being used.
Yeah, I don't think they were very like
good businessmen. They were. Again, I assume it's a man.
That's just pretty bold of you.
But yeah, and in terms of clothing, I think it was very simplified for what these guys were wearing. But like if you go into like the town, were people in like those big puffy dresses? Because in my head, I'm like, so like the whole Jane Austen type stuff, they weren't wearing big gowns. So was that like 1910s? You know what I mean? I don't know.
Listen,
you know
I have
what?
no idea.
You're asking delete all of this. I sound ridiculous. Jalapeno, take it all out.
No, we're not taking any of this out.
1899, it probably was quite a difference. Like considering 100 years, like think about 100 years ago, we dressed so different today than they
which
did
would have been
years ago.
the roaring 20s.
Listen,
right?
So that means women start wearing pants.
I need to pluck these way down so my brows are like little pencil lines.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to relive that decade, okay?
Yeah, listen, we don't have to torture ourselves, okay?
I don't even want to relive this decade.
See, I never had great eyebrows, period. So I never plucked them. So I never had to worry about.
You never had to. You never had to worry about them not growing back.
You just didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
All I know is that the 20s were not a great time for anyone that wasn't a white man. And even then, they probably didn't have it that easy either.
Who knows?
I mean, unless you're rich.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Also, The Great Gatsby, that is in the 1920s.
Yeah.
I read that. Question mark? When did the stock market fail?
1929. That I know.
Okay. I thought I was going to say 1919, but 1929.
Yeah, because the 30s is the Great Depression.
Right. So that all makes sense.
The 20s
with my 30s.
The 30s.
Same. Samesies.
We have that in common. So that's the tale of the Smalls Lighthouse.
All right. Well, thank you for leaving me with lots of questions. Megan.
So many questions. More questions.
And a movie recommendation. So thank you.
100% highly recommend you watch The Lighthouse. And just know it's weird. So if you feel uncomfortable, it's working.
Yeah. That's what it's supposed to do.
You're supposed to feel
the story of my life. If you feel uncomfortable, it's working.
There's so many scenes. So
I love you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
See you next week.
Thank you for listening today. We loved having you. If you liked the episode, share with your friends, family, or anyone who would enjoy it. Also, take a minute to review the Coast Files podcast on Apple Podcasts or YouTube. Leaving us a comment or like really helps. You can email us at coastfilespod@gmail.com, follow us on Instagram at coastfilespod, or visit our website at www.coastfiles.com. You can find the sources for today's episode on our website. See you next week with a new episode.